Welcome back to Thanks I'll Take It From Here, the podcast where we deep dive into TV, film, and books and break down the stories that made us feel something. Today we are diving into episode 10 of The Summer I Turned Pretty, season 3. We're going to talk about Belly's extended stay in Paris and her finally kissing a boy who hasn't lived in Susannah's womb for 9 months. We'll also get into Jeremiah's hoe phase, how Laurel might have caught the ick from John, and Conrad and Belly basically being pen pals. We'll also talk about Jeremiah's possible Ratatouille arc, a big plot hole from season 1, and some Easter eggs you might have missed along with my predictions for how they will wrap up the show. So let's get into it. Episode 10 jumps ahead a few months to Thanksgiving. Belly is still in Paris, sharing an apartment with roommates. She admits she's homesick, struggling with French, and working 2 under-the-table jobs while doing online classes. She misses her family, but she's not ready to come home yet. Paris is where she's figuring out who she is outside of the Fisher Bros. I think she feels like she has something to prove, or like she's supposed to feel whole, and she isn't ready to leave Paris until she gets that, but that's just my opinion. So Belly then FaceTimes Taylor on Thanksgiving, who's throwing a Friendsgiving with Steven and Jeremiah, and yeah, Jer is in his hoe phase, and we can see it at this Thanksgiving. I mean, I get that, breakups are hard, but that girl he was kissing on the countertop, she seemed like some other guesses, like ex, or maybe even current girlfriend. I don't know, whatever their situation was, but they both ended up leaving. So yeah, it's definitely something messy. And I saw a lot of people online who thought at first it was Denise, and I thought that too because of like the curly hair, but I'm glad that Steven and Taylor called him out on that. And it was so weird hearing them say to Jeremiah that he needed to stop hooking up with their friends and colleagues. If Jeremiah is hooking up with Steven's colleagues, that's actually pretty wild considering some of them were invited to his wedding, or at a minimum knew about the wedding. So imagine hooking up with this person at work, like that's so messy. Also, are they soft launching Jeremiah starring in Ratatouille? Because first we got the cake, now he's being picky about the mashed potatoes, and suddenly he's working in a restaurant. I'm calling it now. He's about to be a chef or something in the finale. At that dinner, we find out Jeremiah has been lying to literally everyone about school and where he's living, and when Adam shows up at the dinner, they end up arguing about that. And Adam cuts him off financially. And I have to say, we all know this is an Adam Fisher hate account, but when Jeremiah said, not everything's about money, and Adam came back with, you're right, let's take it out of the equation, and then he cut him off, he kind of ate with that line. I'm not gonna lie, he kind of ate Jeremiah up with that. I died laughing. Poor Jer, he really had a rough Thanksgiving, but that was so funny. Then Steven and Taylor kick him off the couch and up out their apartment. If my sibling housed my ex, the one who cheated on me and that I almost married, I would definitely be a little salty about that. Would y'all? Cause like, that's a little weird. But anyway, Denise ends up letting him crash at her place. And remember I told y'all the streets were saying Jeremiah and Denise are endgame, and this episode was definitely giving that. Look, if Jeremiah keeps growing and Denise doesn't baby him, I'm actually okay with this. I know most people wanted Redbird, but y'all, he's kind of fratty, and I don't think that's what Jeremiah needs. He needs someone who will challenge him and bring out that softer side of him that we really liked in season 1. On the other side of things, Conrad tells Laurel, who's spending Thanksgiving with John, and I have to say, Laurel definitely seems like she gets the ick from John sometimes. Like that whole situation with her getting the medicine from the cabinet, like it just felt like she had the ick. Rewatch that scene and tell me what you think. But whether that's just their banter or something deeper, I really don't know. But I feel like them spending Thanksgiving together does feel like a big step. And in my breakdown of episode 9, I even said maybe we might see them get remarried or engaged, but the jury's still out on that one. But while I was researching for this season, I rewatched season 1, and John actually implied that Laurel couldn't have real romantic relationships in her life because of Susannah, and that their marriage fell apart because there wasn't enough room for both him and Susannah, which is strange. And I hope Jenny Han tells us why this is the case, but I've created a theory of my own. In season 1, Belly asks Laurel if she's ever been in love, like real love, with the fireworks feelings, with anyone. And Laurel admits she did once. She says it was never gonna work out though, and it would have burned them both to the ground. And she specifically says she isn't talking about John. So my theory is either she was in love with Susannah, or maybe she was even talking about Adam, since in the books, Laurel and Adam actually dated first. I know it sounds a little wild, but it makes sense low-key. And since this podcast is all about rewrites and spin-off pitches, tell me this wouldn't work. A prequel about Susannah and Laurel's college years and early adulthood. It could have peak Y2K vibes. We see how they meet, what their friendship or relationship was really like, and how they both eventually met the husbands they ended up divorcing. It would also dive into how women of that generation navigate questions about sexuality and a time that wasn't as open as today. I don't know about y'all, but I'd watch that in a heartbeat. Imagine the Y2K fashion they could pull off at the red carpet. But anyway, back to Conrad. He talks to Laurel about Christmas and inquires about Belly. The conversation is why he decides to start writing to Belly. In the letters, he imagines her life in Paris, drinking coffee, eating croissants. Okay, that was really pretentious. But I feel like some people really do say croissants like that. I used to work at a coffee shop, and there was a guy who would always come in, and he was like, "Can I have a chocolate croissant?" And I was just like, I guess. Don't piss me off. But anyway, he pictures her eating croissants and he sends her Sour Patch Kids and Junior Mint. Now, I've seen a lot of fans online say that felt a little manipulative, but I kind of thought it was sweet. Let me know what y'all think. Basically, Christmas rolls around as he's writing these letters. Belly texts Jeremiah Merry Christmas and gets zero reply. Benito shows up unexpectedly and convinces Belly to go out with him. Fast forward to New Year's Eve, Taylor's in Paris visiting, and Benito shows up with a package from Conrad, and as the clock strikes midnight, Belly kisses Benito. Later in the episode, they start hooking up. Honestly, I'm glad she's trying new things, or I guess new people, especially ones that didn't live in Susannah's womb for 9 months. Like, good for you, Belly. Good for you. Look at you in France trying Mexican, and I'm here for it. And for those who tuned into my podcast last week, where I talked about Benito in the books, you can now see exactly what I meant. His characterization is almost identical. He's basically the same guy, except instead of a motorcycle, he has a Vespa, but he still rocks that leather jacket and that same edgy cool vibe he had on the page. Before I talk about how Christmas went in Cousins, I just want to say the phone call Jeremiah and Belly had on New Year's felt really nice. I love the double meaning of "I should probably let you go" when they were hanging up. That was great writing because we all knew it was deeper than just hanging up. It was about both of them letting each other go. Anyway, so Conrad spends Christmas with Belly's family and asks Steven if everyone still hates him. Steven admits he doesn't personally, but Jeremiah does. I don't like that Steven is weird with Conrad, but not with the person who cheated on his sister. Steven, where's your loyalty? When Jeremiah comes to the beach house, he ends up leaving because he can't bring himself to be at the house with all of the memories of Belly, and he doesn't want to see Conrad, which I guess he doesn't get much of a choice later on in this episode when he runs into Conrad at their mom's grave. Now, at this point in the timeline, it's been 5 years since Susannah passed, and they reflect on that, right? That's kind of what brings them back together, is reflecting on their mother. And finally, the brothers are able to hash things out. Conrad admits he tried to stop loving Belly, but he couldn't, and he tells Jeremiah he knows he was wrong, but also that Jeremiah was wrong for dating Belly a month after they broke up. I think that's when Jeremiah realizes maybe he isn't so innocent either. In the end, they forgive each other, with Jeremiah even giving his blessing for Conrad to go after Belly. And the episode ends with Belly getting a new haircut, settling in her apartment, and writing a short postcard to Conrad. And then we get to see Conrad switching his flight to Paris to go see Belly. I love that Conrad had no problem spending an extra $400 to go see Belly, and not to compare the brothers. Okay, maybe one more time. This is the last time I'm going to compare the brothers, and this is the last time I'm going to bring up the ring, I promise. I know I've said this the last 3 episodes, but I promise y'all this is the last time. But the fact that he was able to pay that extra almost $500 to switch his flight with no hesitation to see Belly, and Jeremiah couldn't even spend more than $300 on a ring but could spend $700 on a cake and literally a bunch of other stuff. Like, this is how you know Jeremiah and Belly was never endgame. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I love how much Belly's French has improved too. I know some people think it's unrealistic, but she's been studying French since high school, you guys. If you go back to season 2, I think the first episode, she's reading The Hunger Games in French. So she's been studying French since high school. So can the logistics police simmer down? They've been doing a lot this season, and I know it's driving Jenny Han crazy because she is constantly feeling like she has to defend herself on Instagram. Okay, so let's get into the Easter eggs and subtle references from episode 10 because there's a lot of little details packed into this one. First up, Conrad keeping Belly's postcard folded in his wallet. That is straight out of the books and will always have Summer. Belly talks about how her letter to Conrad was folded and refolded so many times it was soft around the edges. The show mirrored that perfectly here, and it shows how much even the smallest responses from her means to him. Next, Belly's haircut. When she walks into the salon and says, "I'm ready for something new this summer," it's not just about her hair, it's symbolic for her breaking from the past, especially that season 1 moment when Jeremiah told her, "Don't ever cut your hair." This time she's doing it anyway. It's her end of an era moment, literally cutting ties with old expectations. Now let's talk about the movie Sabrina with Audrey Hepburn. The Sabrina parallels have been running since season 1 when Belly watched the movie at the drive-in with Cam Cameron. She even had a Sabrina poster in her Paris apartment, and the season 3 promo art is basically a recreation of the original Sabrina poster with Belly in the middle of 2 brothers. And in episode 10, they push it even further. Belly tells her mom that her new Paris apartment has a view of the Sacré-Cœur, just like in Sabrina. Even the shot of her at her desk in Paris when she's writing back to Conrad visually mirrors Audrey Hepburn at her desk in the film, just like Sabrina. Paris becomes the place where Belly transforms and figures out who she is. There are also some number Easter eggs. Fans caught Conrad's flight chains costing exactly $473 and the number 14 popping up in the scene. People think these might be symbolic callbacks and maybe tied to important dates or even page numbers in the books. We also get some fun holiday nods. The Christmas scene of Belly dancing at her job was really similar to Kevin's dance scene in Home Alone. It's a playful callback that adds to the cozy holiday vibes. And finally, color symbolism keeps showing up. We've seen this throughout the series with red and blue. Belly wears blue in tense moments with Jeremiah and red when she's in more emotional or intimate scenes with Conrad. Whether that's intentional or not, it definitely tracks with where her heart seems to be leaning. All right, so let's wrap this episode with some theories and predictions for episode 11, the big finale of the Summer I Turned Pretty season 3. So first, let's talk about Belly and Conrad. Episode 10 ended with Conrad booking the flight to Paris, and guys, he's definitely going. The leaks we've seen pretty much confirm it. There are shots of Belly and Conrad on a tour bus, walking by the water, even dancing at night in the streets, and I could totally see it playing out that way, Belly showing Conrad her world in Paris. And then maybe towards the end of the day, they finally talk through everything. So the canceled wedding, Jeremiah, the letters, the heartbreak, everything. And then maybe that's how they end up slow dancing under the streetlights. And I think they just have a perfect night together. There's also a chance that this is the last time we see them together until something pulls them back again. Maybe after a potential time jump which I'll get into later. Now let's talk about Jeremiah. Episode 10 already gave him closure, so I don't think episode 11 is going to be about Jeremiah sulking over Belly anymore. Instead, I think his final arc is forgiveness and moving forward. And maybe even we'll see the beginning of something with Denise. There's also been a running bit with Jeremiah and food. First the cake, then the mashed potatoes, and now he's working in a restaurant. I wouldn't be surprised if the finale hints that Jeremiah might actually become a chef, or at least find some direction in the world that's different from the path that his father has laid out for him. We know Redbird is confirmed for episode 11, so I'm guessing it's for something celebratory with Jeremiah. I think something exciting is going to be happening for Jeremiah in episode 11. That's my hunch. I also wonder if Jeremiah will find out about his dad cheating with Kaylee, because I have seen rumors that Kaylee is pregnant, or that Jeremiah confronts Kaylee about her being a mistress with his dad and how messed up it is that she participated in that while his mom had cancer, and that conversation will lead to Kaylee walking away from Adam because she's just overwhelmed with guilt. Those are the rumors on the street, and I'm always going to report the tea, y'all. So I don't know what's going to happen with that plot point, but I really do hope Jeremiah learns what his dad did, because I think it'll be pivotal in his personal growth journey. And honestly, I'm really praying for Adam's downfall. Like, let him get arrested for fraud. Please. I'm sick of him. And maybe have Steven and Denise take over his business. I mean, that would be messy, but I love a mess, so I'm here for it. Speaking of Steven and Denise, I think the finale could set them up to get their business off the ground. We already know Steven quit. I think we're going to see Denise do the same thing. And it'll be good to see them break away from Adam and building something of their own. And honestly, I'd love to see them thriving without Adam holding power over them. Then we have Steven and Taylor. Fans have been buzzing about them all season, and I actually think the finale might give us their engagement, if not their wedding. And if not Steven and Taylor, then maybe Laurel and John. We've seen Laurel spending more time with him, and while their history is complicated, an engagement or even just deciding to give their relationship another shot is something I can't totally rule out, even though I think she was in love with Susannah, but whatever. Another theory I want to touch on is John Coughlin. In episode 10, we see those little hints of chest pain and heartburn, and I've seen a lot of fans speculating that he might die. I have a little bit of a different perspective. I think it could potentially be a setup for a health scare in the finale. If that happens, I don't think it's going to be like super tragic. I think it'll be more of a catalyst for pulling Belly home, giving her perspective, and forcing her to think about family and love. And this is why I said earlier that maybe something pulls Belly back from Paris. I don't know if it's John having a health crisis, or an engagement or wedding between Steven and Taylor, or Laurel and John, but I think something big at home could be the trigger. Some people have also speculated Conrad might be the one with the health scare, because he touches his arm and his chest a lot, and he mentioned heart disease running in their family, that he might have some kind of health crisis too. But I think it's because of his anxiety. But honestly, I think that would be lazy writing, and I would not be here for that. My point is, I think something is gonna pull Belly back, because I don't think Jenny Han would write Belly giving up Paris just to be with Conrad. We've already seen her sacrifice so much for Jeremiah. So I think what brings her home is the question we should all be asking. Maybe it's one of the things I already mentioned, or maybe it's a job opportunity. I don't know. I really would hate to see her uproot her life in Paris because Conrad lives in the States. And I'm sure many of you could agree with that. Even if you are a Bonrad stan. Like, I think it's fine to be a Bonrad stan and want to see them together. I just want to see them together in a way that makes sense for both their personal growth journey. And that brings me to how the finale ends. Jenny Han has said she doesn't like endings that feel too neat or tied up with a bow. She wants emotional truth, not just romantic closure. So I don't know if we're getting a wedding, y'all, between Belly and Conrad. And here's my wild theory, and I'm standing on it, even though part of me hopes I'm wrong. Because let's be real, I love to see a Conrad wedding, but I think what we're actually going to see is hope for the two of them, whether that's dating or getting engaged. I just don't think it'll be marriage with kids like in the books. I also think we're getting something special, whether it's a longer episode or a surprise episode or a spin-off announcement. I think some big announcement is coming. So that's my final predictions for episode 11. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss my breakdowns of the final episode. And if you want more theories, Easter eggs, and hot takes, follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Take It From Here Pod. That's a wrap on this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you back here for the chaos of episode 11.